Hi guys, it's been a while. Sorry.
I'm not really sure where I'm looking now.
There.
I know, but when I look up there, if you look at me on the screen, it looks like I'm looking really high up. It looks like I'm talking out because I'm on this squatty little stool that we've got now.
Oh, will it
We've
help
changed. Is that? I don't know if that's better or not.
I don't know.
Well, if I look at the camera, where do I look like I'm looking?
Into the camera.
Which is like
At
above,
the-
right?
yeah.
I look like I'm looking.
No, you look like you're looking at the viewer.
Really?
This is not a strong start, is it? Hi guys.
Slick.
Yeah. So it's been over a
Have
year.
you missed us?
It's been over a year, so we thought it
It's
was
not been
time.
over a year since we've been away.
No.
Over a year.
It's
since
been over
we
a year
started
since
these,
we've been
just
doing
about.
these. Yeah, our first one of these we actually recorded on the 21st of March, which wasn't actually the official start of lockdown in the UK, but it was the day, well, it was the day after I'd officially been told I had to close my work. And it turns out it wasn't long after that the rest of the country had to follow suit. So we thought now would be a good time to check in with you and do a little bit of a recap, because what a year, eh? And yeah, you might be able to see, obviously, circumstances have changed so much. Put on a bit of lockdown
We've been
weight.
eating all the pies.
A lot of lockdown weight has
and
been
I'll
put
do
on.
my. Yep. So we're both similar boat.
So yeah, on both personal and sort of national, well, not on the national front. That's not what I want to call that.
No.
But yeah, nationally and personally, quite a lot has happened this year. I think it's safe to say. So yeah, I don't even know where to start in terms of recapping. But
Well,
so we did this every day in a row for about 120 something days.
yes.
After that point, we did them very sporadically.
Well, we sort of intended to sort of drop down to about 3 days a week, I think was the initial.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen.
I think we've done about 10 since then.
But we had extenuating circumstances.
Yeah.
Well, I went back to work.
As did I.
Briefly. And also just pregnancy.
Yeah.
Turns out it's a lot, isn't it?
It is quite tricky, yeah.
Not so much for me. But
I don't know, I think I've put you through it a bit. But yeah, it did sort of eat into my energy levels and my general ability to give a fuck, to be honest. So yeah, so we just sort of thought, like, yeah, a year's recap would be a good time to sort of check in and see how you're doing. On the actual anniversary of the first vlog, where I'd sort of proposed doing one of these, I was really rough, so we didn't do one that night. But I'm feeling much better today. So yeah, so
in preparation for this,
yeah,
you went back and watched the first one of these we did.
I
didn't you?
did. Yeah, very different to sort of how it morphed. It was very interesting to watch, actually, because it was very different stylistically.
Was it?
Yeah, we sort of it was much more us quietly chatting to each other. And it became, I think, much more, hey guys, talking to you, because
Performative.
yeah, we didn't know if we'd have any guys. We kind of thought we were doing it for ourselves and to sort of document everything that was going on initially.
Just
And
to have
then
a project,
gradually,
wasn't it, really,
yeah.
to focus on during this weird time.
And I have to say, I loved it. I really loved, like, back when we were doing these every day, it was sometimes hard going, and some days it was sort of like, oh, like, particularly when it was bleak days, sort of news-wise, and things were tough. But actually, always when we then did them, I always felt better for doing them.
Well, it's quite cathartic sometimes talking
yeah.
about some of the stuff that's going on in the news or how we were coping with it emotionally.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember now, like, because now, just like, we're sort of going, oh, well, we're both feeling quite cheerful and chipper and let's do a vlog, but because we were doing them every day for such a weird time and there's so much stuff, I imagine some of those are probably quite raw if you look back at them now.
Some would get a bit emotional on, and others are very sort of flippant and light, and I think it was quite a good reflection of how life was for a lot of that time, because there was, like, very much the whole year, like, has been a real roller coaster. Professionally, yes, true. Professionally,
you say, pointing at your stomach.
Personally, and just sort of for everybody.
You're selling the baby.
No, I'm not selling the baby. No, I just misspoke. I'm an idiot right now. My brain doesn't work. Stop picking at me. But yeah, so
The good thing about having a baby in lockdown is you don't get all strangers coming up and like putting their hands all on you.
Yeah, I've literally had no unsolicited tummy touches whatsoever. The downside is obviously there are people that I would like to have been able to touch my tummy that have not been able to touch my tummy because we're still in lockdown, basically. Now, we did come out of lockdown to varying degrees. We've never been like all restrictions off. But to varying degrees, things opened back up. Mainly, I think the best run of it was last summer. Sorry, there's a notification. I should have turned them off, but sorry. Was probably like sort of August and maybe September time was probably the most relaxed restrictions have ever been since last April. And as I say, I did go back to work for a bit, but it was pretty unviable, to be honest, because at the time there was still a rule that you couldn't mix households. It wasn't really viable to be open because the main bulk of our money is made from groups of friends coming. So we weren't having enough bookings coming in, really, but also they were very sporadic. And fair enough, I don't think a lot of people wanted to mix indoors in small groups. So sort of we did give it a good punt and we tried our best and we sort of rearranged some rooms so that we could socially distance them and things like that. But for doing all of that work, then the restrictions tightened up again and then so we just closed again. But we've given it a good stab. So we're currently now closed again, but we're just about relaxing things again now, much more cautiously than things were relaxed last time.
I've obviously been back in work for a while.
Yes.
And I think we were pretty consistent on this vlog of being sort of pro-lockdown, pro-keeping people safe and not taking chances and not being irresponsible. But you do reach a point where you just have a certain frustration of like, so at the minute, during lockdown, I am supposed to commute from Newport to Cardiff, you know, on the train, walking through 2 city centres and spend all day in work dealing with patients, but I can't have, you know, a quiet pint with a friend after work. Do you know what I mean? And it's, you know, I'm all for doing the sensible thing, but it's frustrating when you kind of go like, oh, so I've got to do the
unfun things, but we're still very restricted on any of the stuff that I think is good for mental well-being. Sorry about those noises.
Consider yourselves notified.
Yeah.
It's a notification.
I think that's the thing. Like, the priority, understandably, has been when they have released restrictions, it's been to stimulate the economy, stimulate people getting back to work, stimulate people spending money, which this whole year will have been very expensive. Just furlough, for example, of course, got extended, thank God. And is still actually now going. And again, thank God, because that's what's paying me my wages. Although shortly that'll be maternity leave instead. So it'll still be the government paying my wages, but just in a different way. So thanks, Gov. But yeah, it's sort of been. Oh, I've lost my thread there. Oh God, I've got such baby brain. So for context, for anybody who doesn't know, I'm 38 weeks pregnant tomorrow. So baby could come at any point, which means I'm not getting a lot of sleep. I'm quite uncomfortable, and I've genuinely turned into a bit of an idiot. I can't keep a thought in my head for sort of any length of like that's yeah, she's an idiot. I am, but only I'm allowed to say it. That's how that works.
Well, I was just thinking I just had a HelloFresh delivery, so I hope the baby doesn't come before I've cooked all my recipes.
She can come whenever she's ready now. I'm quite ready for her to come in. But we'll cover that in our other pregnancy vlog, which I'm hoping to fit an instalment in of. Also for today, I should say we're going to try and keep this succinct, which I know we always say, but we're going to try. So we'll try and top this off around about the half-hour mark. But yeah, so it's going back and looking at. We didn't know what this was going to be, what this vlog was going to be to begin with. We just thought. We had sort of talked about doing a vlog or a podcast together anyway, and we just thought, well, this is something that's going to be worth talking about. So let's just recount our sort of experience of it. And it kind of evolved and became a thing that was nice and gave us purpose and gave us a sort of thing to do every day. And we had a lot of fun with it, I think. And I'm glad we did it. And actually, I really like that we've got those things to look back on. It was weird looking back on the first one. and actually some of the early ones were just reminding myself of how scared I was. Just how sort of like, this is like big, this feels big. And now we've got to the stage, I think, where we're used to it. Coronavirus is just part of reality now, and lockdowns and restrictions are sort of par for the course. Excuse me. They come and go, and they sort of wax and wane in terms of strength, but no, I don't think anybody now would be staggered by, oh yeah, they're tightening them back up again. Oh, can't do that now. What? And there's quite a lot of conversations of what is it that we're allowed to? Are we allowed to do that at the moment, or is that off? Is that on? So we're in a like little spell of slightly relaxing restrictions. So, for example, working towards non-essential retail being able to open back up. So I think garden centres opened up on Monday, which had been shut, and supermarkets which had the non-essential areas cordoned off were suddenly allowed to sell non-essentials again. But very little incremental changes this time around, whereas previously I think they relaxed too much too soon and everything spiked. And then we had a very rough time of it in the autumn, which could have been predicted, because it was predicted, because that's exactly what the science said, which then involved cancelling Christmas. And then a big spike in January that was pretty bad. The science does sort of suggest, despite now we having vaccinations, which is going really well, like fair play, the vaccination rollout has probably been the only thing in this that I think has just been an out-and-out success.
But don't forget all the shit they did beforehand, though.
Oh God, yes. But it wouldn't have needed to be such an urgent and well sort of executed thing.
Don't let the government fool you into thinking just because they've done this bit right, they're a good, competent government that's looked after us, because no.
No, well, back at the start of this, the science said, I can't remember which one of the science officers, it was either Chris Whitty or the other fella, Van Tam, said that looking ahead, if we can keep the death toll below 120,000, that would be, or around 20,000, that would be a good outcome. They predict that we're around about 100,000 higher than that, 126,000 deaths.
So not a
with
good outcome.
COVID. So not a good outcome, and significantly worse than most other countries. Per capita, I think we are one of the worst countries in the world at the way we've handled this. But even by just numbers alone, we've done pretty badly.
And that's before you even think about all the people with long COVID and people who suffered out in other ways.
Yes.
I've heard about people losing sort of extremities and things, and
there's been a lot, because that's obviously only taking into account life or death, but there will be a lot of other people who are long-term, if not permanently, affected by having COVID, and they're not in those stats, but their lives will be forever changed. And there's I think everybody knows somebody who's had it. Most people probably know somebody with long COVID to some extent, and actually while the emphasis early on was very much like this is something that's affecting old people and sick people, that is the bulk of people with this were people with underlying health conditions or were the elderly, but it's not exclusively by any means, and there have been a lot of very young healthy people whose lives have been permanently changed by this. And it's good that you mention long COVID, because I think I read long COVID and its symptoms do vary, as does COVID, because COVID seems to be a bit of a law unto itself in terms of how it comes out in different people, because some people have quite an easy ride with it and other people will get very, very sick. And there's not a huge amount of rhyme or reason, it seems. And also different organ systems seem to be affected in different people. The lungs seem to be the sort of main target for most people, so you get this cough and you get difficulty breathing. But some people's hearts have then developed weaknesses, some people have had digestive problems and all sorts of other things. Long COVID, for those that don't know, seems to be a sort of post-infection syndrome, which there are others that are already similar to this, fibromyalgia being one of them. ME is also linked to being, oh, this is possibly like a post-viral malaise, and that kind of thing. Reading through some people's experience with long COVID, it sounds very, very similar to my initial experiences with having fibromyalgia. Going from being perfectly healthy, I wasn't in great shape, but I was, fine, no health complaints, and, tooting along fine, to suddenly just being incapable of doing little, like, I couldn't walk a short distance, I couldn't read, I didn't have the energy to watch TV because I couldn't focus on it. I would mix up my words, I'd have real cognitive problems, and pain, and like crippling fatigue that you just can't really explain. Like, nobody can understand the kind of fatigue that you live with a chronic fatigue condition without living it, because it's not being tired. It is worlds away from being tired. No amount of sleep that you have makes you feel rested, and it is debilitating, and it's awful. And that's how most people seem to be describing long COVID. And these are people who used to sort of do a 15-mile bike ride to work, who now can't walk up the stairs or have to sit down in the shower. And I hope that those people will recover, and I hope that long COVID will turn out to be something that, it might be that you have a really rough time of it for sort of 9 months to a year, but you do bounce back. But it might not be the case that you do bounce back, in which case there's going to be a lot of people who might be looking at long-term health conditions like mine that basically permanently affect how productive you can be in terms of the workforce, but also how sort of fulfilling your life can be. Like, thankfully, my fibro, because I mentioned it, sort of, I'm not at that level of debilitation with it now, but I'm 11 years into a diagnosis, and over a long time we've found medications that help, we've found lifestyle changes that help, and I do still have bad days, but I still can't work. I couldn't work a 40-hour week. I couldn't go on a hiking holiday. I couldn't walk up a mountain. Like, those things are gone. I can't do those things, and I'll never be able to do those things. And that's forever. And if we're looking at, let's say, 10% of the people who've had COVID having those kind of long-term symptoms, that's going to look at a very different workforce going forward.
Obviously,
because it's young, healthy people who were the prime workers.
Obviously,
that seem to be suffering with that.
Obviously, it's horrible that this is happening to sort of otherwise healthy people who are being. Well, it's horrible. It happens to anyone, but like, it's not nice to see otherwise healthy young people being kind of brought low by conditions like this. But it does make you think maybe, one positive that can be taken out of it is it shines a bit of a light on chronic health conditions, chronic fatigue conditions, when there isn't always something obvious and physical you can point at and go, this is the problem, and where people can be a bit cynical or dubious or not have an understanding of them.
Absolutely. Invisible illnesses get overlooked and get dismissed as psychosomatic and just don't get taken seriously by both the general public but also by health professionals. But I think generally the consensus is that long COVID is real, which hopefully therefore will mean that people go, maybe the other things that are essentially identical to it are also real. And hopefully that will mean that because of the scale of it, that maybe the scale of research into it will be huge, because it'll need to be, and maybe it will lead to benefits for other conditions, which is kind of what I'm hoping. Like, I know that's a very selfish hope. I'm not sort of like, yay, I'm glad loads more people are ill because now they'll take my illness seriously. But there is an element of, there's a knock-on effect.
You wouldn't wish anyone to get ill, but given that it has happened anyway, then hopefully we can seize what positives there are from it in terms of research and greater understanding and all those sorts of things. But
yeah, and actually that sort of leads on to sort of something maybe a little bit more positive, is that it's weird to say, but I do think there are positives that will come out of this having happened. Nobody would choose for this to have happened. But it has. And the world that we're now living in is very different to the world it was a year ago. And looking at this vlog, there was a naivety early on that at some point we'd go back to normal and there'd be an end point. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think there's going to ever be a definitive end point. I think coronavirus is going to be something that we live with, But hopefully, as more and more swathes of the population become vaccinated and vaccinating against it becomes normal, it won't put such a strain on the NHS, so we can sort of go back to living relatively normally. But yeah, this is with us now for the long haul. But what has happened, because it had to happen with lockdown measures and things like that, and is that we've changed the way particularly working life goes. Social lives have really taken a beating because, as we say, sort of we've had to sort of find ways to go back to work. They haven't been quite so rigorous in finding ways that we can still socialise with friends and family. And that obviously has had a huge sort of impact on people's mental well-being, and I really could just want to hang out with some mates, really, just like 4 or 5 friends in my living room with a game, or like just chatting. Like, we haven't had that for, like, we haven't been able to have friends in our house all year. We've been able to do it in gardens to an extent, and maybe like household bubbles and things like that, but you couldn't just invite people over on a whim, and for a year of that, and that's hard. But because basically workplaces have had to find ways to keep going and keep trading, and certain businesses have done very well. So online retail has just exploded and things like that. But
just before we started filming before lockdown happened, by the way, before we couldn't have people around, we had Lorna Prichard and Eleri Morgan round for sort of food and board games, and they both said, "Oh, well, you'll have to come over to ours next time," which doesn't really make sense because they live in separate houses. But you know, they said, "Oh, well, one of us will host and we'll do something."
Make a regular thing of this.
Yeah, and then lockdown happened. So if anyone watching this knows either of those two people, remind them they owe us a meal and some board games, and we want to come around and
the trouble is, we could probably have to be the hosts now, because it's not so easy to take a little babbins to other people's houses.
Alright, well, they'll have to bring some food.
Bring food. Lorna, Eleri, bring some food. Well, eventually we'll be allowed to do those things again, but who knows when.
No.
But yeah, so to go back to sort of, but then like workplaces and working environment has had to change to allow people to work from home, to sort of adapt working practices. Now, there's a bunch of big positives to that I think is worth shouting about, that we should make sure we keep, we should like hold on to. One is employers allowing flexibility to work from home. Firstly, I think having the choice to work from home is brilliant for most people's mental well-being. If ideally you still have a workplace that you can go to, like a base camp where you can all sort of have tete-a-tetes, etc. But just if you can work from home, not having to commute every day, it allows flexibility. It allows you to do things like have a pet that you might not be able to have. You can work in comfortable clothes in your own environment. It's really good for you. Massively reduces sort of environmental impact from people commuting. But also the big one that I love, and it sort of strikes a chord with me sort of personally, is it means there's a huge number of people that were essentially excluded from the workforce previously due to things like mobility issues or health issues, who couldn't manage every day to get to an office at 9 a.m, but who can get to their home office every day and work at a desk from home. And those people can now actually get back into the workforce, because previously employers didn't have to make that possible, and they now do. And for doing it for a year for everybody else, it's very hard to then justify to somebody, "Oh no, we won't hire you because you have to work from home." It's like, well, everybody else does, so so that's good. Brilliant.
It would be great, yeah, like you say, environmentally. It would mean, you know, not for a lot of people, it would mean not spending sort of, you know, extra time in your working day
And
away
money.
from home, where you're not actually being paid, where actually, yes, it might be costing you money to commute. Instead of that, you can finish your work day and, hey, you can leave your home office and be there with your partner, your kids, or, you know, if you're single or you whatever, just be ready to go out and see your friends, or not have to go home first and then come back out, or whatever it might be. And also, for those people who do still have to commute, excuse me,
We're both at it.
for those people who do still have to commute, hopefully makes the commuting experience a bit more pleasant or a bit less unpleasant because it's not going to be as crowded on the roads or on public transport if fewer people are having to do it at those busy hours. And,
yeah, definitely. And I think it is important to grab the little positives, and actually overall, like, that's got a good big impact on a lot of things, but like, take the positives where we can find them, because there's been a lot of negatives and it's been a tough year. And yeah, what a roller coaster. But we're getting to the 25-minute mark, and we've talked very generally, but I think what a year we've had just personally since that first little lockdown vlog back in March last year.
Well, you said to me, watching that lockdown vlog, you said that I already looked like I had lockdown
hair.
hair.
I don't remember your hair being so shaggy to begin with, but it was proper shaggy.
I've always been someone whose hair gets quite scruffy. I don't get it cut as often, perhaps, as some people would. And
I like it long and shaggy.
It's always, so I've often let it get quite long and unruly before I go and have anything done. So it happened to be at a point where I hadn't had a haircut for a while. And then I ended up going for sort of a haircut. They've just reopened. Was it last Monday? They reopened the hairdressers
recently.
And suddenly you could get haircuts again. I didn't think I was going to be the sort of person who'd rush back on the first day.
No.
But then I got offered a 1-day job as a background actor on a film set. And
you needed to be sort of
they asked me to turn up with neat hair, and my lockdown locks weren't going to cut it.
Telling you that at 6 p.m. the night before was a bit of well, everybody's been in lockdown. If you need us with neat hair, you kind of need to give us some notice.
So yeah, I had a haircut on like the first possible day, which I didn't think was going to be me at all, but yeah, it's looking a lot neater than when we started this whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I gave you one haircut, didn't I?
Yes,
very reluctantly.
You did. I know. Yeah. Well, I wanted you to do the second one as well, not cheaper.
I'm glad I didn't.
But,
I'm not good at it. I'm not a hairdresser.
That's fine. It's fine, isn't it?
Yeah, but I have to look at it. It was fine. I think I did a decent job. But it was like my hair desperately needs. Look at this. It's like smoke.
The other thing I should mention is I've had both my jabs now.
Yes, I haven't had any because of that.
You're pregnant.
But I wouldn't have been in any of the high risk categories anyway. But
the first of my jabs I had, literally, I had a Christmas break from my day job.
We should explain that's because of working with NHS patients through his day job.
Yes. So, in a customer-facing role, patient-facing role, in interacting with them. So that's why I was entitled to a jab. But I had a Christmas break from my day job, and my first jab ended up being not the day before I went back, but the day before that. And so it was the last 2 days of my holiday, the first one was suddenly commuting into Cardiff to get an injection, and then the last day before I went back, I spent dealing with all the side effects from that, which was feeling really just
you had a bit of a bad time with it, because some people
tired and nauseous and stuff, and I was grumpy that was how the last day of my Christmas break was being spent.
I can attest to that. He was quite grumpy. But yeah, because the vaccinations, it was the Pfizer vaccination that you had. The two that are being rolled out in the UK mainly are, well, I think only are the Pfizer jab and the Oxford AstraZeneca one. You were getting the Pfizer. The Pfizer was actually the one that was first released here, and then the Oxford AstraZeneca one came a little bit later. And people, again, as with COVID, people have had a very mixed bag in terms of whether or not they've had side effects. But you actually had quite a rough time of it. It was only really like a day and a half of sort of bad symptoms, but you were quite fluey and
each time it was
rough.
only sort of a day, but it
bad day.
really sort of had to write off the day because I was just not up for sort of doing anything other than sitting on a sofa and feeling sorry for myself.
Well, I've done enough of that in the last 9 months. It was probably fair that you got a couple of days in.
But it's and I don't want to sound ungrateful. Glad to have had the jab and everything. It does make you feel a lot better when you're walking around.
Well, it's been really good for my peace of mind because I've essentially been shielding because of being pregnant, because the advice is basically, particularly from 28 weeks onwards, to consider yourself clinically vulnerable, so for workplace risk assessments, etc. So I've essentially been shielding, and so, but obviously, there's only so much shielding that you can do if somebody that lives in your house is leaving every day and is mixing with the general public in work and on the commute. But you having the jab made me feel a lot better that you're much less likely to sort of give anything to me.
We know that we can still, should clarify, we know, obviously you can still carry the bug and
Yes.
pass it on and
They
everything. It's not like
do believe it does reduce your chances of doing
Yes,
that.
so
But yes, you still have to
just,
act like you've still
you
got to
know,
social distance. You've
still
still got to wear
wash
your
your
mask.
hands and all that stuff. But
it's been knowing that you're not likely to get it, and therefore you're not likely to bring it to me, has been good for my peace of mind. But it's been weird because we've kind of switched places, because I went back to work first before you did last time. But you've been in work for ages now, and I've been at home. So I've been having more of a lockdown over the last few months. And they've been a strange few months to be in lockdown, because all usual pregnancy things, I haven't been able to, even things like picking a pram. We couldn't go to a shop and try them out. So we had to do it purely on online research.
yeah.
And it's been strange.
My parents got us lots of little gifts.
Loads.
For the baby and for us. And they sort of said when my sister was pregnant before, they enjoyed sort of going around the shops and picking out little bits and pieces for the baby. And obviously this time it wasn't the
To just
same.
sort
They
of
just had to
brainstorm,
browse
like, well,
online, and
what's
it's
good
not
for babies.
it's not the same thing, is it? But
and I had a baby shower that my friends planned, but that was virtual. It was via Zoom, which was lovely. It was great actually, and actually was lovely to have sort of that level of socialising with so many people that I know and love, which is a bit overwhelming because I'm not used to being able to do that at the moment. But yeah, just a very strange year. So since our first lockdown vlog, back when we were just two lovely people living in sin, we have since got engaged.
Yes.
Got married.
Yes.
Look at that. There it is.
Oh, and that one.
Got preggers, and baby's going to be joining us any day now. And yeah, I think like it's been a roller coaster, but I would definitely say it brought us closer, if anything. Like living in the backdrop of this dystopian apocalyptic sort of hellscape, it only served to make me gravitate towards you and just be like, okay, the world might be falling apart, but we've got each other.
During lockdown,
good.
There were lots of stories sort of coming out of China of, you know, the minute restrictions were lifted, people were running out to get divorces and things. And yeah, it does, if anything, make you feel secure in your relationship. You know, we've been through this. We spent a lot of time when we were both on furlough. We were just in the house together for long stretches, and we didn't jump down each other's throats or get on each other's nerves.
It's not just being sort of stuck with each other 24 hours a day, which is actually taxing for any people. Like two best friends in the world might find 24/7 quite taxing, but to do that with all the sort of low-level anxiety of, I don't know where my next paycheck's coming from, I don't know how I'm going to be financially, I don't know what's going to happen with my career, I'm worried about my loved ones, I'm worried about my own health, all of those things could feed into very poor mental health at the same time. And if you aren't a strong team,
sort of snapping at each other for things that aren't either of your faults, and, you know, and so we were, not to kind of be too like, oh, we were so great, but like we were pretty great.
We were, because I don't think we would have because you would have already bought the ring, you'd already planned to propose, but everything had been peaches and cream at that point. So it was interesting that when the world sort of goes to shit and everything's still good between the two of us, you're like, oh well, that's solidified that. That's definitely because easily you could have gone, maybe I'll rethink this. Just quietly step back and change your plans.
Well, I'd say the thing about the lockdown that's been a bit of a double-edged sword for us is obviously when you have a baby,
yes,
your freedoms are curtailed a bit in terms of going out,
I've heard.
Going out socialising, you know, going to the cinema or the pub or whatever it might be. And
excuse me, sorry.
Having been in lockdown together, it's, you know, on the one hand you go, well, you know, we've sort of passed that test of going, we found out we can not go to the pub, we can stay at home and just have each other's company and be quite happy.
Yep.
That's nice.
That is good.
On the other side of that, there's a little bit of you that goes, it would have been nice to have that last year of freedom before the next 18 take that away, you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's fair.
Just to be able to go have a few more cinema trips and
yeah, well, a couple of
go
things
to the pub with our mates a bit more before we have the baby.
There's a few people that have sort of said things like, all of the pregnancy books and things have sort of suggested before the baby comes, maybe go away together for a weekend, have a bit of quality time, really enjoy these last few weeks when you've just got each other's company. I was like, we can't do any of that. We just had our 2-year anniversary from the day we first met, so we fit quite a lot into those 2 years, but couldn't go to a restaurant or go anywhere because we just couldn't do anything, so we just got a takeaway.
Yeah, well, we even, to the point we were going more, should we watch a film? Should we watch a film? And then it was like, well, we could watch a film, but to be honest,
we're both quite enjoying this terrible TV series.
Yeah, that would just.
Should we just carry on watching that?
That would just interrupt our viewing of Married at First Sight, wouldn't it? So we just watched the same show we watched the day before and the day after.
I guess maybe we can make a fuss for our wedding anniversary by November.
Maybe.
Who knows? Might be in the middle of a third wave by then.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going on? But yeah, so the world changed, and sort of all of the norms for how to deal with it have changed. And I don't think there's going to be really a sense of, right, everything's just back to normal now. The Welsh First Minister, Mark Drakeford, recently said that he thinks there will be some level of restrictions in place throughout the whole year. But by the end of the year, we might be looking at just social distancing in public places, mask wearing and hand washing, so hand sanitizers, etc. There may not be any restrictions by the end of the year on how many people can gather, where you can gather, etc., etc. Which, to be honest, I will take all the social distancing and mask wearing you can throw at me if it means I can just hang out with people that I want to see.
And, yeah, well, the big thing for us is, they've been reopening the hairdressers and the shops and everything else, but they haven't really
relaxed
given
what
any
you can do
sort of
indoors.
clarification in terms of hospitality, in terms of venues, pubs, theatres, obviously escape rooms. So for Ellie's escape room business, we're still just sort of wait and see.
Yeah, indoor hospitality, so it'll probably be quite low on the list of things that reopen.
And obviously for me,
for gigs, for comedy gigs,
for
they're
stand-up
just
comedy, and it's weird. So
largely...
I had these 2 jobs, and one of them was, not the most fun, but was reliable and made sure I had a steady income. And then I had this other one that the income was a bit more up and down, but it was very rewarding, and there was lots of good things going on with it. And
it will come back, but we just don't know when.
We don't know when and at what speed and what the landscape's going to look like.
I think we've got a bit better at just sort of going, well, we'll just have to see what happens. There is no point planning for any of these things because everything keeps changing. And actually, that was something I was saying in the first vlog, was I keep trying to get to grips with what the rules are and what's going to be happening and how to make this work, and then the rules change. And that's still the case. And I think that's going to be still part of how life looks for at least the next 6 months or so. I think the big turning point will be when the majority of the population are vaccinated, and as long as the new variants that keep cropping up aren't resistant to those vaccines. But only time will tell on that. So basically only time will tell on how long we do any kind of lockdown. Basically, while there's still any level of lockdown, we can still do lockdown vlogs, but who knows?
Although with the frequency that we've been putting them out, who knows if anyone will be able to keep up. It's
But I think we probably need to draw things to a close there, because I've already gone over what we said, but only by 8 minutes or so.
I've been a bit more active on my other YouTube channel, though, haven't I? So check that one out if you're starved of us, because there's...
Yeah, you've been putting out plenty on that. I've been the one letting the side down over here.
I try and rope Ellie into those as much as possible as well.
Mainly in an audio-only way nowadays, because I have very low tolerance for anything that means I have to put makeup on. I can't be bothered. I am going to be such a scruffy mum. But, I've been cooking a human. It's been quite hard work, guys. But so I think we'll call it a day there. But yeah, we wanted to recap and sort of check in and say overall, what a fucking year. But,
what a fucking year, mate.
But on a personal level, what a fucking year.
What a fucking year.
What a fucking year. So we'll call it a day there, guys. I hope you are well, and we will see you again some way, shape or form. We're probably going to record a pregnancy vlog now. So if you watch both, then you can watch that next. Right. Bye, guys. Like and subscribe. There's no shame in it.